The wedding prank that turned me into a girl. My name is Ethan, and if I had to sum up my life in one word, it would be safe. Not exciting, not extraordinary, just safe. At 27, I worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm, spent my weekends with the same group of friends I'd known since college, and lived in a one-bedroom apartment that was as unremarkable as my daily routine. I wasn't miserable, but I wasn't exactly living either. The truth was, I felt like I was watching life pass me by. I'd always been the dependable one, the guy who played by the rules and avoided unnecessary risks. That trait had earned me a steady job and a reputation for reliability, but it also left me with a gnawing emptiness I couldn't quite name. I couldn't remember the last time I did something spontaneous, or let myself dream of being anything other than safe. Then there was Rachel, my best friend since high school, who lived on the other end of the spectrum. Rachel was fearless, the kind of person who could turn a dull Tuesday into an adventure. She was getting married soon, and the excitement surrounding her wedding was a bright spot in my otherwise monotonous existence. As her best man, I was thrilled to be part of her big day, but her joy only highlighted how stagnant my own life had become. "Ethan," Rachel said to me one day, her voice tinged with affection and exasperation, "you're like a rock. Solid, dependable, but don't you ever want to shake things up? Try something new." Her words lingered longer than I expected. Did I want to shake things up? The truth was, yes, I did. But every time I thought about stepping out of my comfort zone, a voice in my head told me it wasn't worth the risk. That voice had kept me from pursuing my artistic passions, from traveling to the places I'd always dreamed of, and, if I was being honest, from exploring a part of myself I'd buried long ago. As a kid, I'd loved sneaking into my sister's room to play with her old costume jewelry and try on her scarves. It wasn't about wanting to be her. It was about feeling free to explore something outside the rigid mold of normal. But that side of me was shut away when I grew older, buried beneath layers of practicality and self-doubt. I didn't know it then, but Rachel's wedding would change everything. What started as a playful suggestion would unravel the tightly wound threads of my safe, predictable life, revealing a version of me I hadn't dared to imagine. The turning point came during Rachel's bachelorette planning meeting. She insisted on combining the traditional bachelor and bachelorette festivities into a single, chaotic weekend of fun. The wedding party gathered in her living room, brainstorming ideas and laughing over ridiculous suggestions. "All right," Rachel announced, her eyes glinting with mischief. "We need to raise the stakes. Let's play a prank." The room buzzed with excitement. Rachel's fiancé, Mike, leaned forward, grinning. "What kind of prank?" Rachel turned her gaze toward me, a slow smile spreading across her face. I felt a pang of unease. "How about this? Ethan spends the rehearsal dinner as Emily." A chorus of laughter erupted, but my stomach twisted. "Emily?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Think about it," Rachel said, clearly delighted by her idea. "You'd make such a cute bridesmaid. We'll dress you up, do your makeup, and no one will recognize you. It'll be hilarious." I forced a laugh, hoping my discomfort didn't show. "Very funny, Rachel." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, come on, Ethan. You've always been such a good sport. Besides, you owe me. Remember that time you convinced everyone at prom I had a fake date? That was 10 years ago. And I still haven't forgotten. So what do you say? One evening as a prank, and then I'll consider us even." Everyone was looking at me now, their expressions ranging from amused to expectant. The room seemed to shrink as I searched for a way out. "I don't know," I began, but Rachel wasn't having it. "Live a little, Ethan," she said, her voice softening. "It's just one night. And who knows? You might surprise yourself." Her words struck a nerve. The old, buried part of me stirred, curious and terrified at the same time. "All right," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do it." The room exploded in cheers and laughter, but beneath the noise, my heart was racing. I didn't know what I'd just agreed to, but something told me this was more than a prank. This was the beginning of something I couldn't yet understand. As the days leading up to the rehearsal dinner ticked by, my initial agreement to Rachel's prank began to gnaw at me. The idea of being transformed into Emily was absurd, but there was an undercurrent of something else, something that felt a little too close to curiosity for comfort. "You're being ridiculous," I muttered to myself one morning as I stared into the bathroom mirror. But no matter how much I tried to brush it off, the thought lingered. What would it feel like? Would it be embarrassing? Empowering? Rachel, of course, was ecstatic. "This is going to be amazing, Ethan," she said when we met up to go over the details. She was practically bouncing with excitement. "Don't worry. I'll help you every step of the way." Her enthusiasm was contagious, but it also added to my unease. "Rachel, what if I can't pull it off?" I asked, voicing one of my many fears. "What if everyone can tell it's me, and I just look ridiculous?" "You won't," she said firmly, placing a reassuring hand on my arm. "Trust me, you're going to look stunning. Besides, it's not about fooling everyone. It's about having fun and letting go for a night." The idea of letting go felt foreign, but I nodded anyway. If Rachel believed in me, maybe I could believe in myself. The transformation process began the night before the rehearsal dinner. Rachel insisted we start early, and I found myself sitting in her spare bedroom, surrounded by an assortment of dresses, wigs, and makeup. "Okay," Rachel said, clapping her hands together. "First things first, let's pick a dress." She held up a flowing emerald green gown, the fabric shimmering in the light. "This one will bring out your eyes," she said with a wink. I hesitated, running my fingers over the fabric. "This is so weird," I admitted. "It's not weird," Rachel said, her tone gentle. "It's just different. Give it a chance." With her encouragement, I slipped into the dress. The sensation was strange at first, soft, flowing, and completely unlike anything I'd ever worn. Rachel beamed as she adjusted the fit, her excitement palpable. "See? You're already halfway there," she said. The next few hours were a whirlwind of makeup brushes, curling irons, and laughter. Rachel's easygoing demeanor helped calm my nerves, and I found myself leaning into the process more than I expected. "Close your eyes," she instructed as she applied eyeliner. "And don't flinch. Trust me, this will make your eyes pop." "Pop," I echoed nervously. "Trust the process," she said with a grin. When she was finally finished, she spun my chair toward the mirror. The person staring back at me was unrecognizable. The carefully applied makeup softened my features, the wig framed my face perfectly, and the dress completed the illusion. "Wow," I whispered, unable to look away. Rachel stood behind me, her hands on my shoulders. "Told you," she said, her voice filled with pride. "You look incredible." As I stared at my reflection, a strange mix of emotions washed over me. Part of me felt vulnerable, exposed in a way I'd never been before. But another part, the part I'd buried for so long, felt alive. The real test came the next day. As I walked into the rehearsal dinner, my heart pounded so hard I thought everyone could hear it. But instead of the ridicule I feared, there were gasps, laughter, and even applause. "Emily, you look amazing," someone called out, and I felt my cheeks flush. Rachel was by my side, whispering words of encouragement. "Just breathe. You've got this." As the evening went on, the initial awkwardness began to fade. I found myself laughing, talking, and even dancing, completely immersed in the role of Emily. It wasn't just about the clothes or the makeup, it was about the freedom to step outside the boundaries I'd built around myself. By the end of the night, I realized something startling. For the first time in years, I didn't feel safe. I felt alive. And I wasn't sure I wanted to go back. The day after the rehearsal dinner, the high from being Emily began to fade, replaced by a gnawing sense of vulnerability. I woke up feeling exposed, as though I'd shared a secret I hadn't fully understood myself. What would people think of me now? Was it all just a joke to them? Or had I revealed something more about myself than I intended? These questions looped in my mind as I scrolled through the photos Rachel had sent me from the night before. There I was, smiling and radiant in the emerald dress, but seeing it now filled me with uncertainty. "Morning, superstar," Rachel chirped when she called me later. I sighed. I don't know if superstar is the word I'd use. Don't tell me you're overthinking this, she said, her tone somewhere between teasing and concerned. I can't help it, I admitted. What if people think I enjoyed it too much? What if they think I'm weird? Rachel's voice softened. Ethan, no one's thinking that. You were incredible last night. Everyone loved Emily because you let yourself shine for once. Her words were comforting, but the seed of doubt had already taken root. Later that day, I went out to run errands, and for the first time, I noticed lingering stares. A couple of people who'd been at the rehearsal dinner greeted me with knowing smiles and jokes about how convincing I'd been. You sure you've never done this before? One of them quipped, their tone playful, but laced with curiosity. I forced a laugh, but inside, I felt my insecurities flare. Maybe they were joking, or maybe they'd seen something in me that I wasn't ready to face. The real challenge came when I returned home and found a message from my younger brother, Josh. He'd seen the photos online and wasn't amused. What the hell, Ethan? His text read. Why are you dressed like that? My stomach dropped. Josh and I had always had a complicated relationship. He was more traditional, more rigid in his views, and the thought of explaining this to him was daunting. I hesitated before replying. It was just a prank for Rachel's wedding. No big deal. His response was immediate and curt. It's weird. Don't do it again. His disapproval hit harder than I expected, stirring old wounds of never quite measuring up in his eyes. That evening, I sat with Rachel, trying to process everything. I feel like I've opened a door I can't close, I confessed. And I don't know if I want to. Rachel gave me a long, thoughtful look. Ethan, do you remember what I said about shaking things up? That night wasn't just a prank. It was a chance for you to see yourself differently. You don't have to figure everything out right now, but don't let other people's opinions shut you down. Her words stayed with me, and I decided to take a small step forward. I experimented in private, trying on the dress Rachel had insisted I keep, practicing the makeup techniques she taught me. Each time, I felt a mix of exhilaration and guilt, as if I were treading into forbidden territory. One afternoon, Rachel surprised me by showing up with a shopping bag. I thought you might like this, she said, pulling out a soft sweater in a delicate lavender shade. Rachel, I began, but she cut me off. No pressure, she said. But if you want to keep exploring this, I'm here for you. Her unwavering support was a lifeline. Slowly, I began to feel more confident in embracing this side of myself. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, awkward encounters, and the ever-present fear of judgment. But with each small victory, like the way the lavender sweater made me feel, or the quiet thrill of applying eyeliner just right, I began to see that this wasn't about pretending to be someone else. It was about finally discovering who I might really be. The morning of Rachel's wedding dawned crisp and clear, but my thoughts were anything but settled. As I stared at my reflection in the mirror, the familiar anxiety swirled within me. Rachel's lavender sweater hung on the back of my chair, a quiet reminder of her encouragement. I reached for it impulsively, running my fingers over the soft fabric. This simple piece of clothing had come to symbolize something much larger, a glimpse of myself I couldn't ignore. Ethan, I murmured to the mirror, testing the name as though it no longer fit quite right. A knock at the door startled me. Are you ready yet? Rachel's voice called. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. She stepped in, holding a garment bag, her eyes lighting up as she saw me holding the sweater. I brought something special for you, she said, handing it over with a sly smile. Inside was a sleek, understated dress in pale silver. It wasn't flashy or over the top, but elegant and timeless. Rachel, I began, my voice trembling. I don't know if I can. You can, she interrupted gently. You've already done it once. This time, do it for yourself. I hesitated, then nodded, letting her guide me through the transformation. Each step, slipping into the dress, applying the makeup, pinning on a simple wig, felt like shedding a layer of fear and doubt. When Rachel handed me the mirror, I barely recognized the person staring back. My features were soft, my stance confident, my eyes sparkling with a mix of nervousness and exhilaration. You're stunning, Rachel said, her voice thick with emotion. The wedding itself was a blur of music, laughter, and vibrant colors. As Emily, I moved through the crowd with a newfound ease. Guests greeted me warmly, some with playful comments about my transformation, but none with malice. "You look radiant," an older woman said, patting my hand. "Is this really you, Ethan?" one of the groomsmen asked in awe. For the first time, I didn't shy away from the attention. "It's me," I said simply, feeling a weight lift as the words settled in the air. Later, as I stood beneath the strings of twinkling lights that adorned the garden, Rachel found me, her own makeup slightly smudged from tears of joy. "How do you feel?" she asked, her voice quiet but probing. I took a deep breath, the cool night air filling my lungs. "Like I finally stopped hiding," she smiled, wrapping me in a tight hug. "Welcome to the world, Emily. Or whoever you choose to be." In that moment, I knew the transformation wasn't about a dress or makeup. It was about owning the parts of myself I'd been too afraid to face. I didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, I was ready to start asking the questions. The reception was in full swing, laughter and music echoing across the garden. I stood on the edge of the dance floor, nervously clutching a flute of champagne. As much as I had enjoyed the evening so far, the buzz of conversation and the knowing smiles from guests still left a knot of tension in my chest. "You're doing great," Rachel said as she approached, her arm looped through her new husband's. "But I think it's time for the big moment." I frowned. "Big moment?" Rachel grinned mischievously. "The bouquet toss. You're joining." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Rachel, I don't think. I know you're nervous, but trust me. This is your time to shine." She gave me a pointed look. The crowd had already begun gathering, a mix of cheers and playful banter filling the air. Before I could protest further, Rachel steered me into the center of the group. The other women welcomed me with wide smiles and encouragement, their energy contagious. For the first time, I didn't feel out of place. I felt seen, accepted, and strangely at home. Rachel stepped onto a small podium, bouquet in hand. "All right, ladies, and Ethan," she teased, winking at me. The crowd erupted in laughter, but it wasn't mocking. It was warm, inclusive, and made my heart swell. She turned her back to us, raising the bouquet high. On the count of 3, I could hear my heart pounding as the countdown began.
1, 2,
3. Rachel launched the bouquet into the air, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. I reached up instinctively, and my fingers brushed against the soft petals just as another hand reached for it. The bouquet landed squarely in my grasp, the crowd erupting into cheers and applause. I stood frozen, clutching the flowers as a wave of emotions crashed over me. "Look at you." Rachel beamed as she descended from the podium, wrapping me in a hug. My voice caught, and tears welled in my eyes. "I didn't think I could do this." Rachel pulled back, her own eyes glistening. "But you did. And you were incredible." The crowd's energy softened into warm smiles and congratulatory pats on the back. For the first time, I realized no one was laughing at me, they were celebrating with me. As the night wore on, I found myself dancing, laughing, and embracing the joy of the moment. My fears and doubts felt like distant echoes, replaced by an overwhelming sense of belonging. The transformation wasn't just about being Emily for a night. It was about stepping into a new version of myself, one I was proud to embrace. And as I twirled under the string lights, I knew this was only the beginning. The morning after the wedding, I woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the faint hum of life outside. For the first time in years, I didn't feel a knot of dread in my chest. Instead, there was an unfamiliar lightness, like I'd shed a heavy, invisible weight I'd carried for too long. I stretched, catching sight of a lavender sweater draped across a chair. A soft smile tugged at my lips as the memories of the previous night flooded back. I had danced, laughed, and been embraced as my true self. Rachel found me in the kitchen a little while later, sipping coffee in the borrowed sweater. "Good morning, Emily," she teased, sitting beside me. I chuckled, shaking my head. "Morning, Rachel." I hesitated for a moment, then added, "I think I want to keep exploring this part of me." Not just for the wedding, but for real. She smiled warmly, her eyes glinting with pride. I had a feeling you'd say that. And I'll be here for every step of it. True to her word, Rachel became my biggest supporter. In the weeks that followed, she helped me take small but meaningful steps toward integrating Emily into my everyday life. We shopped for clothes that fit my style, booked makeup lessons, and even practiced walking in heels around her apartment. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of hesitation, awkward stares from strangers, and the lingering fear of rejection. But for every challenge, there was an equal measure of joy, feeling the fabric of a dress that felt like me, seeing the smile on a barista's face when they called me ma'am, and the growing confidence in my own reflection. Work was another hurdle, but even there, I found support in surprising places. My colleagues, once casual acquaintances, became allies as they noticed my subtle changes. They didn't pry, but instead showed quiet acceptance, and over time, I felt safe enough to share more of myself. Rachel and I grew closer than ever. What started as a prank transformed into a journey of discovery and a bond that felt unshakable. Sitting on my couch one evening, the bouquet from the wedding dried and framed on the wall, I realized how far I'd come. Emily wasn't just a version of me, it was me, fully and unapologetically. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged in my own skin. Life has a way of surprising us, often when we least expect it. What started as a wedding prank became a journey of self-discovery, proving that the most unexpected moments can lead to the most profound transformations. Stepping into my true self wasn't just about clothes or makeup. It was about embracing the person I had hidden for so long. It was about finding the courage to face fears, challenge norms, and rewrite the narrative of who I was meant to be. The world might not always understand, but acceptance begins within. When we allow ourselves to explore, grow, and love who we are, we open the door to genuine connections and joy. To anyone standing on the edge of self-discovery, take the leap. You might just find that the person waiting on the other side is more extraordinary than you ever imagined.